At the appointed hour, call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yasmin, are we in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. May I ask you to please call the roll, Yasmin?
Mr. D'Arienzo?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Seabold?
Here.
Mr. Hintz?
Here.
Mr. Alfred?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Scanlon?
Here. Does staff have any changes or additions to the agenda?
No.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Mr. Perry?
Second.
Mr. Alfred? Seconds. All in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of our previous meeting of October 19th. May I have a motion from the commission to approve the previous minutes? Okay.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Seabold and Mr. O'Neill. And all those in favor of approving the minutes of the last meeting, please raise your hand. Again, it's unanimous. Thank you. Let's see here. Appearance by citizens. Do we have any appearances by citizens? Yasmin, anybody signed up or anybody want to raise their hand and be acknowledged?
No, sir, we did not receive any of those.
All right, thank you. We have no unfinished business before us, so we'll move into new business. We're considering STDV 002190-2022, a request from Nadine Chaplin, owner of R5100000030D0000. To rename,
I didn't quite get it.
that is to rename an access easement off Spanish Wells Road. There are no other affected parties. Johanna, you have something that you want to talk about? Thank you.
Yes, Johanna Pfister, Fire Marshal. This was what we presented last Planning Commission meeting, and it was previously Nadine's manor, but we were asked to consult with the family of the property previously and with Mrs. Chaplin, and to come up with a different name that was more indicative of the area. So we did that, and they agreed to use Craftsman Manor. We recommend that Planning Commission approve the application based on the review criteria outlined in the land management ordinance. This is the parcel. It is off of Spanish Wells Road. It is submitted to have 4 dwelling units on it, but it is zoned and can accommodate up to 9 dwelling units. This is what the proposal is right now for the first 4 homes to go on it. And then I will just go through the criteria pretty quickly. That the street names are not duplicated, phonetically similar, or confused with any other streets, and that the street names, this street name meets the requirement of criteria A. Criteria B is that it's simple, logical, and easy to read and pronounce, and is clear and brief. It meets this criteria. It's desirable to use names that have association with Hilton Head Island, specifically the immediate location. As we talked about, we went back to the family that originally was the landowner and consulted with them and the current landowner, and they are both in agreement on the chosen name. Oops. Criteria D is that it doesn't apply because there's only one street, and criteria E, it does not apply in this application either. Criteria F it does not apply in this application. And then also criteria G, which specifies that drive, lane, place, road, street, or way, and then all of the other name types are used. But because this is a access easement, it does not meet this criteria. And so the suffixes manor, trace, and common are used for vehicular access easements. We chose Craftsman's Manor, and so it meets that requirement. And criteria I, it does not apply to this application. So in summary, the street name, it's been vetted and it meets the criteria set out in the LMO. And if you guys have any questions for me at this time, I would be happy to answer them.
Mr. D'Arienzo, any questions, comments? None. Mr. Perry?
No questions or comments.
Mr. Siebold?
No questions?
Mr. Hens? Mr. Alfred?
No.
Mr. Campbell?
No, thank you.
And Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you.
All right, I have none either. Just want to make sure that there are no other affected parties. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay, fair enough. May I get a motion to approve or disapprove? We have comments from the public? Who has their hand up? Somebody? No one? Okay. I will accept a motion from the commission.
So moved.
Okay, a second from Mr. Perry, moved by Mr. O'Neill. All in favor of approving the name for this? Did you have a question or just want to approve it? All raise your right hand. Unanimous vote, Yasmin. Thank you. Okay, taken care of. Thank you, Johaida. Other commission business, we have the proposed meeting schedule for the next year for 23. And having polled the members of the commission here before the meeting started, it looks as though the December 21st meeting will not have a quorum, as we have one vacancy already and possibly one or two more vacancies before that date of the meeting. So is there anything really urgent on the agenda for the December 21 proposed meeting? Anything we can think of that's urgent?
We have several matters already planned for that meeting. We've got LMO amendments, we've got office way development, we've got several street names and a couple of site plan.
You need to move forward with it. We need to take
We'll
those.
definitely need a forum. We could either
All right.
cancel that meeting and wait for the January meeting or try to reschedule the December meeting.
All right, let's, by show of hands, if you think you can make a December 21st meeting, raise your hand, please. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 for sure, and maybe 5. The trouble is we have Mr. Alfred is now going to be taking his seat on the town council. So how do we count a quorum with one vacancy already and possibly a second vacancy by December 21st?
Mr. Chairman, Sean Colin, I'd like to help you move through this. Well, those hands, can you raise them again? That's 5.5. So you have 5, I think, that are maybe available, right? What I'm seeing here, so that's a quorum. You need 5 of the 9.
Right.
It's not 5. It's not a majority of seated commission members. It's a
Majority of
the
chairs.
9.
Yeah.
So we need 5. It looks like we have 5, and we'll see what happens Tuesday.
All right.
But
So if
we
that's the
would
case-
like to keep the meeting scheduled.
Right, it sounds like
until we
LMO
need to-
amendments and others are important. So yes, as of now, unless we have a health issue or something come up, let's go ahead with the December 21st scheduled meeting for this year. With regard to the meeting schedule for next year, any comments from the commissioners on the proposed dates of next year's meetings? I see none. So if you're in favor of the schedule as we have it in front of us, please raise your right hand. It was in the packet, the dates were in the packet. Okay, all right, I believe we have a unanimous vote on that as well for approving our schedule for next year. Under Chairman's report, I just want to congratulate officially Mr. Alfred for being elected to town council, and we will miss his counsel here on this body. but I know he's moving on to bigger and better things, and I want to thank you, Steve, for all your help during the years I've been on here and as chair as well.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much.
We commend you to town council and hope you'll do great things there as well.
Can I just say a couple of sentences?
Please.
I have enjoyed the time I've spent with you guys and with this process and our discussions. And I have a great deal of respect for the contributions that all of you have made. It's been very enjoyable. But don't forget that it's at some point I'm going to see your handiwork. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Alfred. We go into the committee reports at this point. Mr. O'Neill on CIP committee.
Yes, I understand from staff that we were scheduled and going to be scheduled in January for our next meeting.
Great, and we have a lot of issues there to deal with and how we spend the people's money. A comprehensive plan, Mr. Campbell, anything there?
Yeah, there's nothing there for confidence.
Nothing there today. On the Gulagichi Task Force, Tom, is there anything new to report there? No? Okay. LMO Committee, Mr. Perry?
Yeah, we had a meeting the other day and for a project that is on Office Park Road for demolition of some buildings and to build a housing complex along with a commercial structure. That will be coming to the Planning Commission on the 21st.
Fair enough. Rules of procedure, nothing new there, Mr. Alfred?
No.
Okay, thank you. We go into staff reports at this time. We're going to take up sub 001860 Twin Oaks subdivision, the site plan review. Nicole Dixon.
Good afternoon, Nicole Dixon for the record. I'll be presenting the site plan and basic summary of the Twin Oaks subdivision. Just briefly, introduction, one of the new processes that staff has implemented is to present new commercial development and new subdivisions to the Planning Commission for information purposes only. This will give the Planning Commission and the general public an opportunity to provide input and be able to review applications before they're reviewed by, approved by staff. So this is the first one that you all will have the opportunity to review. This is for 2 vacant parcels, which I've circled and read up on the screen. 2 vacant parcels located off Jonesville Road. This is Spanish Wells Road here, Jonesville Road, and then this is that new site where Bailey's Cove subdivision is currently under construction. Show you an aerial view as well. So you can kind of take a look and see the various vacant parcels located along Jonesville and where the development has occurred so far. The site plan was provided in your packet for the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to combine the 2 parcels and develop a 22-lot subdivision. There's enough acreage for 23 lots, but they're proposing 22 lots. So here's Jonesville Road. This is the proposed access to the majority of the lots. And then there are 2 lots that will be accessed off of Jonesville Road. This is the stormwater detention pond, and then the lots circle around this drive here. Some of this has gone through staff review twice now. Staff has provided comments. Some of the items that staff continues to push for is more meaningful open space so that it serves for opportunities for gathering and amenities for the development. Looking for more of a curvilinear street, work around some of the natural features on the site and the trees to preserve them and take advantage of the tree preservation and have that as amenities to the single-family lots. We're also looking at for a more complete road ends at this T so that doesn't look so unfinished and kind of like the roads just stop. So more of maybe a cul-de-sac or something that makes it look more finished and complete. We're also looking for a site plan that shows estimated housing footprints and driveway locations. We're also pushing for varying house types with different architecture, so that it doesn't look just like a cookie cutter subdivision and looks more low country in style. And we're also pushing for pathways internal to the development. So I will open it up to you all to provide some input and feedback on this, and then I know that there's members of the public here as well that would like to comment on the proposed subdivision.
Fair enough. Nicole, let me say at the outset here that the development review process is, in my opinion, having been to a couple of these, is excellent.
Thank you.
And really does, and I think the way the staff of the town interviews the developers and asks the tough questions is a really good thing for the whole community. And I want to commend you for making sure that that review process continues.
Thank you.
And the ones I've been to have been very informative, especially on this particular parcel. Is it your opinion that we have enough amenities for the people that may end up in this development? I mean, has the developer gotten back to you with regard to amenities?
No, so we, at that last development review team meeting that you're speaking of, we provided our second round of staff comments, and the applicant has not resubmitted plans addressing those comments yet. They requested that they come to Planning Commission with their second submittal plans, rather than taking staff's comments into consideration and making those changes first. So what's presented up on the screen is their second submittal, not addressing staff's latest round of plans. So no, staff does not feel like there's meaningful amenities and open space provided on this plan. There's some sporadic little corners of open space just to meet that 16% requirement. But we're looking for, a real meaningful gathering space to be used by the residents of.
Is the reason for not building the last lot, in other words, there was 23, there's room for 23, but they're not going to develop 23, 22s with the number. Is that space going to be used for amenities, or is that the reason it was not?
I'm not sure. So when they came in for pre-application last year, the proposed plan was for 23 lots. They have reduced it by one.
Okay.
And the applicant is here today. They can answer that question.
Fair enough. Okay, let's take public comments before the commission. So anybody who'd like to speak to the commission on this subject, please identify yourself. Raise your hand. I don't see, there's no one who wants to speak on it? Back here?
I just would like to clarify.
Please come up to the mic and identify yourself.
Dan McDonough, I live on 11 Creek Cove Lane, just down the street. Trying to get clarification on the number of lots. From what I understand, it's an RM4, which is 4 lots per acre, and I believe this is 3.5 acres, and I can't see how I get to the 22.
In the RM4 zoning district, if you have 3 acres, you're allowed to have 6 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, so that's still 18.
It's 3.92 acres is the
And
net
that's
acreage.
And can you define net?
Net acres it excludes tidal wetlands.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
So that 3.92 acres is usable land.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments from the public? Back here, sir. Come on up.
My name is Wes Branick. I live in the area. Could you show me on that map, are there any other subdivisions in planning? In the Jonesville area?
We've got several. So 234 Jonesville, which is down here, is proposed to be subdivided. We've got the Bailey's Cove subdivision, which is up at the intersection of Jonesville and Spanish Wells. And then we've received a pre-application for the stables for that site to be redeveloped, but we have not received a formal application yet.
On that big area there, how many homes, apartments, whatever?
Oh, gosh. I can pull it up quickly. I don't remember offhand. Missy, do you remember how many homes in Bailey's Cove? No? I think it was maybe 160 something,
160?
something like that.
So,
193? Okay.
190.
Sorry, I can pull it up.
Can we
if
ask
you
you to
remember.
get a confirmation on that?
Yeah, I
Because
can
we're
look
all
it up right
guessing
now.
numbers, and that's not appropriate.
So knowing all that, you think the Jonesville infrastructure exists to handle all this?
Are you asking that question of me? Oh, okay,
Anybody
sorry.
that wants to answer?
Have any of you driven down Jonesville Road ever?
Sure.
An hour ago you did? How do you feel about adding all of those?
Ma'am, if you want to speak, you can get in line after this gentleman, okay?
Well,
147 units.
all right. So we got a lot of development going on that street. And like she said, I don't know if you've taken a drive down there.
Come
but-
to the microphone, please.
Yeah, please.
So there's a lot of development going on down there. And if you haven't gone down there recently, it looks a lot different than it did 6 months ago. And I have a real concern that we're going to have infrastructure problems, meaning traffic problems in the area. It's a one-way street. There's some side roads that potentially someday could be other ways in and out of there, but end result, I don't think we're ready, infrastructure-wise, I don't think we're ready for that number of units coming in, the traffic, all that.
Well, specifically, may I ask you, when you say infrastructure, you talking about roads or what other infrastructure comes to mind? when you-
Mainly traffic issues.
Mainly traffic?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Doesn't
you,
it make
sir.
sense that you got a one road in, one road out? It's already close to 278. If you go there at 4:30, most days you're going to have a backup to Jonesville. You know, if you have an accident or something like that, like the last 2 days, it was back to Bluebell. You know where Bluebell is? It was already back to Bluebell. It's going to take you 25 minutes, 30 minutes to get out of there. And then if you go around and go up to the expressway, it was backed up a mile and a half last 2 days. So I don't think we're ready for it.
Thank you, sir. Madam, do you want to say a few words?
I mean, we're all saying the same thing.
Please come up and identify yourself.
Hello, my name is Angela McSwain, and I've lived off of Jonesville for 10 years in the paddocks. I think everyone that lives on Jonesville Road we all are in agreement that Jonesville Road can't handle all of these new homes that are being put here. And you guys, the town has been great with us. They continually meet with us, but they keep saying the same thing over and over again, and they don't really listen to anything that we're saying. They're saying that Bailey's Cove Village Park said that the traffic study says no problem to 146 homes. And maybe that's the case, but now we have more, and then there's going to be more, and then the stables, and we don't even have bike paths. And I know the bike paths are on the docket for 2023, but every time we talk to you, they get pushed back a little bit farther down the road in 2023. So realistically, we're not going to see a bike path in 2023, but we are going to see 146 new homes. And you know that Bailey's Cove, there's 5 exits and entrances. So that's insane. There's going to be all those cars coming and going on that corner because, Mr. Hines, you just saw that awesome corner that we have. All of those people are going to be walking with their kids in the road to go to the pool, which is on the other side of the street. And it's surprising that the town doesn't care about the safety. Good grief, how many people have we had run over on Hilton Head this week? Kind of a lot. And these are going to be like families walking on the road. And And then they say, the town keeps saying, well, we'll reduce the speed limit and we'll put speed bumps. I'm like, well, now you're gonna punish us? Like, the people who live on Jonesville, we're gonna get punished by having speed bumps? And that's not gonna help. People are still gonna go the same speed. The road needs widening. We need bike paths, we need turn lanes, we need some thought to say, like, can we dump that many more people out onto Spanish Wells, which is already pushing capacity. Waze now takes every tourist to go to the south end down Spanish Wells. Do you ever notice that too? Like, if you pull up Waze, it takes them down Spanish Wells. So I just want you guys to think about that and think about all the people and think about the safety. We would love it if the houses weren't going to be built, but we know that can't stop. We can't stop that. But we could maybe try to make it a safer place to live.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would like to remind you, though, that last year this Planning Commission did approve the bike path for safety reasons along that road, so people didn't have to walk down the street, and it's been placed as a priority on our CIP calendar for next year's approval and funding. Would hope that would be a priority that stays. Sir, you wanted to address us?
My name is Bobby Rand. I live on Jonesville Road. And I have a question. Not long ago, I read in the newspaper where the county, quote, took over the maintenance of a private road. And I'm asking, why could not something like this happen with Miller Road, which would give us another in and out? Why can't that happen here?
We're not saying it can't, but we can certainly look into that. I mean, Miller is an offshoot off of Jonesville, I take it? I'm not familiar with the street.
Yeah, it connects Jonesville to Spanish Wells Road.
Okay, fair enough.
It's this road right here.
If I'm not mistaken, I think
It's unapproved right now.
Yeah.
is that a private road?
It is.
It's a private road, okay.
That would, if something could be done like that on that road, that would eliminate, that would help tremendously of all the concerns that we have about the traffic.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I see another hand back here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Steve Clark. I live on Walking Horse adjacent to the new Twin Oaks. There was rumor that they were going to try to cut Walking Horse over into Twin Oaks area. Is that an absolute no?
That's not what's being proposed. I'll pull the plan back up. This is Walking Horse right here.
Yeah.
I don't see any proposed connection.
And that, was that just an easement? Why is it separated, those two lots separated like that, right down the middle where?
Looks like it's planned open space, but the applicant is here. They can answer that.
Nicole, can you pull up the buffer, the landscaping buffer that shows that there's a barrier between the two?
Yeah, so there's buffer. Looks like it's a utility easement, but not for access.
The only other thing too is that, I mean, everybody else says the same thing. Jonesville Road, it's a nice street, and all these cars it's not going to be feasible. The only suggestion I could make, if you can't make Miller a hard top for the fire department to come in and out, if it can't be done, to at least look at that as maybe an alternate bike lane, walking path, so at least you can walk up, from my house, I could walk up Jonesville Road, take a right on Miller, and that would take me out to Spanish Wells, where there's better bike lanes and walking lanes, and it would be safer than going around those curves, so it's just an idea. And I think the nice lady back here was referring to the latest development that's underway. Phase 2 is going to be across Spanish Wells Road, is what she was referring to. So those people that are living across Spanish Wells Road have to cross back over to get to their pool and their community center, and it's not going to be a good thing. So maybe Miller would be a better option for them to walk down that way. I'm just trying to make things better. So, okay.
Thank you. It's a helpful suggestion. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Members of the commission, I will go around the room here. Start with you, Mr. Hens. Any thoughts on what we've heard today and what was in the protocols where people could type in things? Oh, you want to speak on this, please?
Mr. Chairman, if you indulge me just for a moment, I wanted to share some information with the commission and the members here and those that are watching. So the town will execute a job order next week to do a traffic impact assessment of the greater Jonesville area. We understand one was done for the Bailey's Cove. It had a recommendation related to the Jonesville Spanish Wells intersection.
When you say greater Jonesville area, can you?
It'll be all the way down Jonesville Road. It'll go Spanish Wells up to the signalized intersection at 278, and then down Spanish Wells Road in the other direction toward Marshland Road, that section there. So so the greater Jonesville area, and we can certainly provide a map that describes that. Execute a contract, a job order next week to have that done. The county's currently engaging an engineer to do a traffic calming evaluation based on meetings that were held in the community. So the traffic impact assessment, if there's recommendations that emerge from that assessment, we'll work between the town and the county on improvements, whether they're part of the CIP or working with the developer as needed as development occurs along that stretch. Right now the development that we're seeing on Jonesville is a product of the current entitlements in the land management ordinance. Mm-hmm. Most of this property is zoned RM4. The way that RM4 is currently described from a density standpoint, if you have less than 3 acres, you can do 4 units per acre. If you're between 3 and 5, you can do 6 units per acre. And if you have 5 acres or more, you can do 8 units an acre. Now, I will say that most developers, when they buy a property, they look at the maximum density and try to get the maximum yield while also providing the minimum site development standards with setback, buffer, parking, impervious, right? So the purpose and intent of our subdivision regulations are to push for better development, right? Value added developing communities. And so that's what we're doing with this and the other subdivisions that are currently active in our system. And that's why we're presenting to you. We see a plan. We'd like to see improvements made. We're sharing this, having public comment to get some additional input for comments and hopefully consideration of revisions by the applicant to do something a little different. And I would agree the amenity section as part of the subdivision plan, in my opinion, is lacking. There's some opportunity to create a better subdivision layout, and not the black and white on the site development standards, but the purpose and intent of what we're trying to do with neighborhoods. I think we're within our rights in the land management ordinance to ask for these things. But I did want to let the commission know we are engaged on this greater traffic impact assessment. It may lead to code changes. This is likely another district that will evaluate, like Mid-Island, to help calibrate the development level intensities that are allowed and make changes to the code that are necessary to mitigate or mediate some of those issues. We always say we can't pave our way out of overdevelopment, and that's not what we're trying to do here. If improvements are needed, we'll chart a path forward on how to do those improvements, but also on the other end, look at ways to make sure that the entitlements along the stretch are in keeping with the ability for this area to handle growth and future development. So that's what we're currently engaged on, let the commission know.
So when you talk about code changes, what type of elements would be within those code changes that could be affected by these studies?
Well, I'll use the Mid-Island District as an example. Rather than to have this sliding scale of density, it's a more uniform number that will come out of that.
More along the lines of safety and security, how that falls into play, because what is from a fire standard, what is the servicing aspect with the development on Jonesville Road? What else has to be done? What else has to come in? What else needs to be provided And I would imagine some of those things would follow within a study and affect the codes.
Yes, sir. And it could be that the result of the evaluation here in the study is that this needs to be much lower from a density standpoint.
Okay.
Whether or not it's a new district or can fit within a redefined existing district. But that's part of, that's part of the evaluation. And based on that, appropriate code changes should be considered by Planning Commission and recommended council. So,
Let me ask, how do you feel about the gentleman's suggestion about the Miller Road? What could be done there to provide another area of access and egress?
it's something that we can consider. Again, a lot of the gentleman made the comment about a lot of times the county or municipalities take over roads, and a lot of times they do if it's part of a development that has public streets. This is a privately owned, unimproved roadway. It doesn't mean we can't look at it as an option. It's part of what we will assess through the traffic impact study and see if that's a viable option for consideration of bringing into the county or the county network, right, to make it a public access to address some traffic issues.
Okay. Have y'all gotten in touch with the owner of Miller Road?
Pardon me?
Have you gotten in touch with the owner of Miller
We have it
Road?
on our action plan. Want to have the benefit of having the meeting with Planning Commission to hear public comments. So we are not actively engaged as this is a town initiative or CIP program, but that will come out through this process. The traffic impact study will take a little bit of time to complete. We anticipate that it'll be done late January, early February to have those results. And then while I'm here, the pathway, we've been advancing the work on the pathway from the beginning of the fiscal year. Early action items are to survey the entire area to understand existing conditions. And our process would be to go from surveying to look at some engineering and options that may be available to serve bike and ped facilities along that stretch, and then to bring those forward for consideration and ultimately approve as part of our CIP program for construction. So that's where we're at. We're moving through the process. It's not as easy as just rolling a paver in there, clearing and paving a pathway. We need to make sure we do the survey and the assessment, engineering, and present options.
John, could I just ask about relative timing then, when those studies will be finished versus the decision on the next steps in development? And when can we anticipate in CIP seeing those pathway numbers?
Yeah, we should have something in the spring as far as engineering and options for review. And we'll move that forward to make sure that town manager and council are comfortable with options, understanding the cost and the treatments that are available, and then program through into the CIP. Now, again, the Planning Commission recommended this as a priority item. That's why it's in our it's funded, and Town Council supported it. It's currently in our CIP, and we're moving through the steps. A typical CIP project is probably an 18-month minimum to do the survey, the due diligence, the engineering, the design work, the permitting, and to get it to where it's a construction project. And then the construction period is another, depending how big it is, right? Could be 3, 6, 9 months, a year for some big projects.
Yeah, I guess my real question
Yes,
is what comes first, kind of the chicken or the egg? Do we get the infrastructure and safety questions answered before we've made decisions about the first phase of the overall?
Yeah, we'll have the traffic impact study will inform final options that are available for road, intersection, pathway, and bike facilities.
Okay,
So
good.
yes, sir, absolutely. We don't want to race it. And, and as part of the process here, these subdivisions, there's a list of requirements that they need to meet. Some require a traffic impact study based on thresholds, some don't. And so I can't hold up a subdivision approval if they were not required to do a traffic impact study, but we can certainly, as we move through these processes, identify improvements that either the town, the county, or future development would need to be responsible to execute as we go forward.
Can I follow up on Mr. O'Neill's question? Also on the timeline aspects of it, if I heard you correctly, there are two aspects that are under work right now. One is the traffic impact, and the other is potential changes in the LMO dealing with general development. Again, we've got two different processes that may be going on in the town at the same time the developer wants to get approval. This is only a preliminary discussion, so it'll come back to the Planning Commission at some future date. How do those dates line up?
Well, we will, and I sent an email out to the citizens and kind of the folks that have been part of the chain over time, that the results of the traffic impact study will be used to inform a district-wide evaluation that will lead to something, right? Future land use. You know, the Mid-Island was our first district, probably the most complex. But we will evaluate another half a dozen districts, maybe more. This will be one of them to stitch together into that urban growth framework, island-wide master plan, and the code changes need to be made to then push toward that future land use and expectation. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that'll be moving forward here early part of '23.
Mr. Perry, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, so, you know, from a standpoint of character, this is one of the things that we look at and go, obviously it's going to be clear cut, just like the Village Park area was done, and that again is not within our character. As a member of the commission, I'm concerned about property values in the neighboring areas, because you're looking at diminishing the style of homes within that neighborhood complex. It is overutilizing a sensitive piece of property on the marshland. And while I appreciate the fact that they dropped one from 23 to 22, I think it is an issue with our LMO that we've got to address to make certain that we're doing what's right in the best interest of the community. You know, we've seen it happen too much recently, and unfortunately, I've said this a lot lately, but, you know, the LMO served us well for 10 years, but now it's not providing us really with what is in the best interest of the community. So thank you all for coming out and expressing your opinions. Remember that it was your voice from Jonesville Road and that development that brought this open dais for you to express your concerns about your neighborhood, and it also got you a bike path that's on the CIP. So continue talking, but you know, it's unfortunate in one way, but it's the law, but it's unfortunate that we can't vote on it. But I hope that our comments will be on record when we go to work on the LMO changes.
Yes. Okay, and Mr. Campbell, did you have some, is there somebody, I saw another hand over here and one in the back. Okay, we'll start with this gentleman over here. He hasn't been before us yet.
My name is Donnie Kunich. I've been in Jonesville Road for 21 years. And what they're doing is not just diminishing values, but they're going to cause more havoc to a situation we already have that's out of control, which is the Spanish Wells intersection at 4:30 in the afternoon. You're doing a traffic study this coming week. I'd recommend not do it anywhere near on Thanksgiving, because half the people who are working on a daily basis are not going to be on the road. It's a wasteful use of resources. I'd do it on a busy day, on a regular busy day, and I guess my platform is, if there's an emergency at 4:30 in the afternoon on Jonesville Road, God forbid if it's one of our families, children, or loved ones, because there's no way EMS is going to get down that road and into the hospital in a timely fashion. And it's unmanageable at this point. There were comments that we all put online yesterday.
Yes,
There were 6 of us.
Yes, we've seen. We've read them.
This room has a posted sign up there that says, for safety reasons, there's only so much capacity. The simple rule for Hilton Head, with a single exit, there should be a rule of capacity of number of units of cars per day. We can limit the number of units being built on that property or any other property on any other area in Hilton Head, not just Jonesville, based on capacity for a single exit, just like we do on a building for safety reasons. And I think that's something that the town really has to look at. I've been here 40 years, and there's been a lot of changes, most for good. But I think now it's becoming a greed issue. You know, RM4 to RM6, the only person that makes good on that is the developer, not the community. And it does hurt the values, because if you can put a smaller home on a smaller lot, drops the values. Bigger home, bigger lot, it will maintain those values. And finally, for Miller Road, if it's for the betterment of the community, for an exit, which we need, it's called eminent domain. We have that right, or you have that right, to look at it from a safety standpoint, not just for walking, but for driving in and out of that community on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sean, the order is being placed next week. The study's not being done next week. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's not a snapshot based on any particular day. They look at traffic counts, historic data, existing development, program development, future options for development. So yeah, it looks at a much more comprehensive thing than just a certain day of the week.
Thank you.
I saw other hands up earlier. The gentleman back in the corner.
So
So come on up and visit with us.
I like what I'm hearing about what we're going to do in the future. But did I sense this, that what you're doing for this traffic study and all this is going to have no impact on this area being done already? Is that right or wrong?
Great question. What I mentioned in my comments, the current land management ordinance as drafted requires traffic impact studies to be done when development reaches a certain threshold. This subdivision does not meet that threshold. We're going to do a traffic impact assessment of the whole area, understanding the development pressure that exists in Jonesville, Spanish Wells, both with existing applications, the level of current development that exists on Jonesville. What I mentioned is I can't hold up a subdivision application because of a traffic impact study that they weren't required to submit. If improvements are recommended as at the conclusion of that traffic impact study, then we will work with the county, the town, and property and developments that are under consideration for improvements to be made along that stretch to mitigate the traffic impacts that are identified. Yes, sir.
So the short answer is no.
We will not. Yeah, I don't have the authority to deny something that wasn't a requirement per the adopted code.
I understand. And is that, I'm not real familiar with all this until this all started happening. The bigger one, the 140 unit one, that's in the same ballpark, in the same?
They were required to do a traffic impact study. One was done. There was recommendation made for a right turn lane on Spanish Wells and Jonesville. And so, again, looking at this area in more comprehensive nature, there may be other improvements that are identified that are needed, and we'll work with the town and the county to figure out the path forward on how to implement those projects.
All right, so the end result is what we've been shown today, the 140 and the other one, that's going to happen, right?
The Bailey's Cove completed their traffic impact study that they were required to do. I know we're working with them on a phase 2. This development was not required to do one. And so, yes, there's that development based on the entitlements. And again, I mentioned that this area has been zoned the same way for a couple decades. So it's not a rezoning, it's just now there's development pressure and intensity that's occurring here per the adopted code.
All right, so we're going to have this here. We're going to have what we got, what's been presented. And then we're going to have a traffic study, and the traffic study might say all kinds of different things. Will we implement that, or will we have to wait for somebody else to try to develop something before we implement whatever the recommendations are?
We will evaluate the recommendations for if improvements are recommended. We'll evaluate those list of recommendations for improvements and then coordinate between the town and county, those that are that should be advanced within CIPs or into a project.
And it could also affect the LMO and how that,
Yes, sir.
make changes there.
And just one more thing, because I got a captive audience here. As part of our LMO amendments that we're considering, a complete review of the traffic impact assessment requirements is part of that, so that, because right now it's with impact to the closest signalized intersection, which I think unfortunately misses a lot of more meaningful, localized improvements that should be done. So that's part of our amendment process.
One last question here. In addition to traffic, other infrastructure, sewers, the like, what's the status of the Jonesville Road area with regard to future development after these two projects and maybe further on down the road there?
There's coordination through our development review process, permitting process with all utility providers. And again, I saw the comments too about school district and growth. They're all part of the discussion, all informed. We require will-serve letters from the PSD, Public Service District, to make sure that there's adequate provision for water and sewer. And the school's informed about potential development potential and can weigh in on that as well. So there is coordination through all of those permitting and partner agencies on all the development that occurs through our development review process.
Okay, now I can assure those who sent their comments into the portal that we have read them. We appreciate your interest in speaking up. That's how we learn things here. And I know that there's a lot of concern about issues other than just traffic in the community. And we will make sure that as we proceed working with staff that what you've said will be heard, and hopefully we can resolve some of these issues as we move along with these studies. Nicole?
Yeah, sure. I just would like to clarify that the plan that you see up front is not ready to be approved. I know that there was some comments about that. So this is not ready to be approved. Like Sean mentioned, staff reviews proposed development plans based on the LMO technical requirements, density, setbacks, buffers, but we also look at the purpose and intent of our regulations, and just wanted to read you a few things from the subdivision standards, our purpose and intent section. The purpose of a subdivision layout is to create a functional and attractive development with infrastructure and lots appropriately sized and located to minimize adverse impacts. They should be designed to promote health, safety, convenience, order, welfare of the present and future residents of the town, provide for orderly growth and development, ensure adequate open space and recreation facilities. So staff is reviewing this plan to ensure that those standards are being met. So it doesn't mean that they're going to get their maximum 23 lots or 22 lots. We're pushing for better. And so I just wanted to make you all aware of that, and we welcome your input on this.
Thank you. I have another hand in the air over here, sir.
I just want some clarity.
Come on up.
A couple of things. Thank you again. The traffic impact study that the Bailey's Point did recommended put the turn lane in Jonesville, which was there originally. When they did the causeway, they omitted it and put it back one. So they're only being forced to do what was there anyways. In my opinion, there has to be a turn lane that goes right on Spanish Wells, and not taxpayers paying for it, but the developer. Because if you're getting ready to leave Jonesville at 4:30 in the afternoon, and you have to leave left, there's going to be a line of people backing up. And then the other thing is, I see nothing on that map about all the historical large oak trees standing on that property. Bailey's Point had to preserve many of them. There's nothing on that map that shows me there's any preservation of those trees. That would impact the number of units instantly if we took a concerted look at those large oak trees on that property. Just an idea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. All right, any other hands? Otherwise, I'm going to go to the members of the commission. Mr. Hens will start over there. Any comments or questions?
Well, that's a lot to unpack.
It is.
And the purpose of this in our discussion is to combine with the community out here to give our feedback to staff. Is that what we're here for to do? Okay. And and those guidelines that you just read us, what staff looks for in approving developments, that was all done with Bailey's Cove, so we have a confident level that those standards were put in place, and we should feel good about the Bailey Cove development, because that's the big one. I mean, what we're talking about today, Twin Oaks is chump change compared to Bailey's Cove.
He's back.
Mr. Hens, great question. I will tell you that Phase 1 of Bailey's Cove, no, was not reviewed and approved in the same manner as I'm asking staff to review subdivisions. No. Now, Bailey's Cove has Phase 2, and we pushed them for improvements that are consistent with the purpose and intent. Twin Oaks and Tidelands on Jonesville Road, we're pushing. 15 Wimbledon on Folly Field, we're pushing, and it's to beat that purpose and intent. So I'm not going to hide behind the fact that Phase 1 of Bailey's Cove is not meeting the expectation that we have for subdivision regulations, but we continue to push for better and make improvements to these as we go forward.
Appreciate
Yes, sir.
you saying.
How long ago was Phase 1 approved, do we know? How far back?
Last,
Like December?
yeah, probably almost a year ago.
I think.
Year ago.
I don't have this date. It was late last year, I believe.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Seabolt, anything?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Mr. DiRienzo.
Some very good feedback from the public. I think that's the purpose of this, to understand what the concerns are that allow us to take a more critical eye at this subdivision plan. One comment about the specimen oaks. It would be great to see those specimen oaks on this particular plat plan and then review it accordingly, because we can't save them all, but we certainly have to save as many as we can and then go through the replacement program that we're aware of. So good give and take, and appreciate all the feedback.
Mr. Alfred, anything you want to add?
As mentioned earlier, this is the first time that this particular procedure has been followed. By that, I mean that bringing a matter to the Planning Commission before it goes to staff. And as you heard from Mr. Colin and others, there's a lot of effort going on right now to review and look at rules that need to be potentially changed. What's disappointing about that is, as he indicated, this particular project is not going to be subject to the revisions that are going to be made over the next year or so. So the town is doing its best to try to improve the process. It just doesn't appear that these particular developments on Jonesville will do anything more than make us think, yeah, maybe we should be doing better, and we will.
Mr. Campbell.
No, I don't have any questions at this point.
Mr. O'Neill.
Yeah, it's a question and a comment. I worry a little bit about the linear thinking that we've talked about here. I think that staff has done a great job within the context of our current rules and the rest of it, and no concern there. The concern I would have, though, is if you approve one project based upon an LMO role, and then you go to the next one and you approve that one, and then the third one, it sounds like there's a potential third phase in all of this, and you approve that within the rules, and then you look back and you say, well, wait a minute, we haven't got the right infrastructure, we haven't got the right safety stuff, we haven't got the right... It's more of a question. I don't know how you get at that, but the linear thinking that could happen here is something that I have some concern with. Not today, but as we go into the future.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Perry.
Yeah, so, Sean, first of all, thank you for that statement just a moment ago. I think it's very important for the community to understand that not everything works the way it's supposed to, and when it doesn't, it gets addressed. to bring it back into character. So thank you for that. And thank you all for your comments and input, because it really is what has driven this meeting today from what happened, like I said before, at that piece of land on Jonesville Road. Yeah, I agree, Mark, that the linear thought and town staff is working within the confines of the direction, but that's where we've got to address that direction from a planning commission side to make certain that it continues the character that we want it to be. And you're right, the oak trees need to be, the specimen oaks, there needs to be a separate submission showing all specimen oaks, or specimen trees, sorry, so that it can be identified and know what the true impact is. I'm going to take it one step further, and I'd mentioned this before in an LMO meeting, that I think it would be a great idea for town staff to hold some classes for those designers and land planners that are out there, so they can understand the thought process of the town with this new change, and especially as the LMO amendments change, have a training session or education session for those folks, so that they understand and they can better prepare what they present to the town. So those are my final comments.
Madam, did you have something you wanted to add? Yeah. You got to come up and tell us who you are.
Thank you. I'm Courtney Struna. I live at Blue Crab Manor, all the way at the end of Jonesville. I'm just thinking now, what about projects that are in the pipeline that are not approved? I mean, is it too late if there's going to be an amendment to the LMO? What happens with some of the other things that are in the pipeline, and can they be held until until a better decision can be made for our community? I'm concerned about the horse farm. We've heard threats from one developer about tiny houses. It's unbelievable that this is happening in our community. And, you know, we need pedal to the metal help on Jonesville Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Many times the government operates, unfortunately, through a rearview mirror, and but what we can do is hopefully learn from our shortcomings and mistakes as to future development, especially down the road on Jonesville. What you've done here today is you've made government come to a stop and take a look and say, hey, we're not doing everything perfectly, and we need to start focusing on the things that matter to people, especially the residents that are affected in the street. So whether it becomes traffic or infrastructure, or training developers about how we do things in Hilton Head, especially those that are new to the island, all these will. What you've done today is you've helped us put the brakes on some things here, and you've helped us decide to look through the front of the windshield instead of in the rearview mirror all the time. And I commend you for speaking up, for sending in your comments, which I read with great interest, every one of them. And I understand your concerns for safety, for traffic problems, infrastructure, and we tried to get you that bike path, and I promise you that will come with time, and that will help alleviate a little bit of the safety issue. But I know that the traffic issue is a major one. I'm hoping that the study will provide us with some things that we can do for you. But what you've done is you've spoken up, and that's to be commended, to give us a chance to stop the slow process of government and say, hey, what can we do better for these people in the Jonesville community? So I appreciate your comments, every one of them here today and in writing that were submitted. Are there any other people who need to comment? Are we gone through the commissioners? If not, I believe we've come to the end of our session today. And so I want to adjourn this meeting if there's no other business before us. Thank you all.